Hello, Doctor Who.
Hello, Doctor Who fans. We're going to talk now about Sleep No More. And we've got notes on it, which means this discussion will have some form of structure.
Found footage. Does it work? No.
Well, it's a trend of the moment, so...
Well,
do you think it was a good decision to adopt it?
I think in, grand television tradition, the writers are responding to a trend that is sort of passé anyway. Found footage is a way of making a film. Not necessarily a good way, but what it does well is to make strange things realistic and believable. It makes the Blair Witch realistic.
Yes.
You could argue that it makes superheroes realistic because of the way Chronicle was filmed.
Does Doctor Who need to be realistic, you ask?
Well, and I would answer, the reason it works is because it isn't realistic. It's completely ridiculous.
Precisely.
And so, for me, the very moment that the Doctor and Clara walked onto screen from a weird angle, and we're meant to be human beings looking at these people,
yeah.
And what they are saying is television dialogue, not things that people really would say.
You see people walking around the corner saying those things, and you think, what the fuck is up with them?
Well, exactly. Instead of making Doctor Who more realistic, it pointed out how completely unrealistic it is.
But at the same time, it made a story that was even more ridiculous than some of the ones we previously had. The sleep dust in your eye takes over your body in a machine made by a professor who turns out to be made of sleep dust. It's kind of...
Who, at any point in the production process, said, yes, Mark, we're going to let you do sleep dust in your eye comes to life?
To be honest, it's actually one of my few non-problems.
Explain why it's not a problem.
Because it's creative enough that I could get on board with it and go, ooh, this is a bit weird, a bit odd.
Right.
And I was like, well, the Rasmussen... Because I was going to say, as my summary, Sleep No More has many problems. Creativity isn't one of them. At least there's new ideas in there. The sleep dust thing is something. My problem with the episode is the sort of conflicting tones that he's going for with it.
Or as I've written here in these notes that we've referenced for the audience, attempt of mixing too many tones and intentions. What does the episode want to do, Tom?
Many things. Firstly, it wants to be funny. So we had the sort of kind of tongue-in-cheek stuff with the the hologram that comes above the sleep machines.
Yeah, and the repetition of the Sandman song.
Yes, that was... that weird scene where he's outside the door and the door won't let him in unless he sings the Sandman song.
Yeah.
Now,
was that a scene from an American Pie movie? Or was that a scene from Blair Witch Project? Or was that a scene from Doctor Who? It wasn't quite any of those things.
Exactly.
And it was all of those things.
And that was the problem. I will say this, occasionally it was mildly scary.
Were you scared? Yes.
I
mean, I take that as yes, as you said that.
Well, the build-up of the monster was not too bad, fairly effective in places, and the very, very end with Rasmussen, I was pretty glad not to be a child while watching that. I'll admit.
Yeah.
The way his face sort of crumbles and falls, and he keeps talking even after half his face has fallen off. That was scary.
Yes.
Okay, so it wants to do comedy.
Yeah.
It wants to scare you, and it wants to kind of do some kind of meta-commentary on the way the show has operated frequently in previous years. Like, I think there's a bit of... You know how there's lots of Troughton stories where there's some mad professor and he's made a thing and it's gone wrong? Well, I think...
Yes.
That's many of them as far as I understand.
That's many stories, in fact.
Many stories.
That's Frankenstein.
Many science fiction stories.
Yes.
So there's sort of a commentary on the ridiculousness of science fiction juxtaposed with the realism of fan footage, and it doesn't quite
Those are the
work
opposite things,
at
though.
all.
I didn't necessarily see that he was trying to parody science fiction tropes.
Okay.
Do you think so? I mean...
Well, I saw that in it, but that's just me.
I mean, sure, that's what you saw in it. But, I mean, if that is what that intention was, those are the opposite things to do.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you've got sort of casual comedy for a family-friendly audience. There's too many things trying to be done here.
Who's it for? What's it doing?
Yeah, because it's like modern horror, but it's old horror with the professor there. There's too many things. The episode in itself is sort of a non-entity, is the problem. despite what I think is actually quite an entertaining performance by Reece Shearsmith, some interesting ideas, like how the Doctor doesn't win in the end, he is beaten.
Yeah, but then what's the implications of that?
For the Doctor, nothing.
Well, the implication is that half the galaxy turns into eye gunk, apparently.
Yeah, and apparently Mark Gatiss has a sequel planned for this episode, by the way. I admit there are a couple in there where I was like, okay, this is sort of harking back to the thing, my pet peeve from last year of characters that die and don't really do anything. But Bethany Black's 464 could have gone somewhere, didn't really. But Bethany Black herself is such a likeably geeky fan of the show. You know what happened on set, right? No. Bethany Black came in, and there was Peter Capaldi. And one day on set, David Tennant and Russell T Davies decided to show up. Maybe he was starring in it. No,
he wasn't.
So then David Tennant and Peter Capaldi and David Tennant are talking, and Peter says, "Hey, you've not seen my TARDIS yet, have you?" And he goes, "No, I haven't." And then he says, "Well, let's all go to my TARDIS." And Bethany is with her fiance.
Yeah.
They get to the TARDIS. They are with two doctors, one showrunner, and she says, "You know, our wedding can't really beat this." And she goes, "Yeah, I know." And for that, just hearing that, and just because 464 was a relatively unique character, not really gone into much, just kind of a sort of thing that's there. A non-human.
I'll tell you what. Much like the intentions, there was a lot of ideas that could have been used. The sleep monsters, bad idea in my opinion. We're gone into the idea of these grunts. I mean, you had maybe a two-parter of like Planet of the Ood type there, like creating human beings to be put into wars. Fantastic, interesting themes that you could do with that. She didn't really belong in this found footage episode, which should have been solely about the found footage idea. World building is fine, but if it's more interesting than the world that we're actually seeing, it's not, because it's just distracting.
I agree.
I disagree with what you said about the characters dying with no point. We had to have one character die so we can introduce the threat of the sleep monster.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then we had the guy who was racist against grunts reconciling with the grunt. The grunt dies to save him. That's a nice story.
Yeah, no, that wasn't too bad.
And when he dies, I can't remember how he dies. I was honestly really drunk when I watched this, and I've had no drive whatsoever to watch it again, because it's just confused and messy.
I don't, however, call it a bad episode. When I said harking back to boring characters, I don't think it's particularly bad for it. But I mean, I think that the scene where the guy is trying to get through the door and this machine isn't letting him, and she's like the thing from Portal for some reason.
The thing with that scene, was that meant to be funny?
I don't know. I think it was meant to be a sort of Mark Gatiss blend of scary and funny.
Yeah, but why would you make a death scene into a comedy scene? It exists because he wanted to do found footage, but then the story that he hangs it on is just so unfound footage. It's the furthest end of Doctor Who stretching your suspension of disbelief. Eye Gunk comes alive. It's like, what it's like is, because he said he'd been planning it for years, it's like he's taken all of his little thoughts, stray thoughts, and then just shoved them into one episode.
What do you think of Rasmussen's overall plan? He basically, everything we saw there, it's meant to be something else. The reason there's so much meta-contextual stuff, as I said, is because at the end of the day, Rasmussen was manufacturing this to look like a story, supposedly. Yeah. So there's a professor, he's made a machine, that's all harking back to old Doctor Who, whatever, and that turns out to be a faked thing that the Doctor doesn't notice. And is it a satisfying ending?
I think it's a confusing ending.
It is confusing.
What does it mean?
Why are they all cameras that are recording footage that's being transmitted to all the screens in the ship?
Why is the Eye Gunk a camera now?
It's a slightly ridiculous thing. But I thought Rasmussen was entertaining, and I thought those last few seconds were kind of, oh, okay.
Scary, yeah.
That's a thing. That's scary.
Well, those last few minutes were a good idea. Well, you wanted to talk about comparing them to other Mark Gatiss scripts.
Okay, so let's do that. So, Robot of Sherwood, it's comic all the way through. It knows what it is.
The thing about Robot of Sherwood is, if you don't like Doctor Who doing comedy, you won't like it. but at least it knows that it's a comedy.
Yeah, it knows
and
what
it
it
plays by
is.
the rules of that.
It's got its place.
It does it all the way through, and that's why I thought it was one of his better scripts.
Crimson Horror, parodical in its own way, and does it well. You know,
I think Crimson Horror is another example of him having lots of ideas that he doesn't quite know how to structure them. Is it a Doctor Light episode about Jenny? Or is it a Dr. Phil story about the Doctor? And then the bit in the middle where they try and fill in the backstory with like silent film footage. Like, those are lots of ideas. I think ultimately it kind of works.
yeah. I mean, the point is, I wasn't left kind of bewildered by it a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think by the end we know what we were meant to think. We were meant to think that was a fun adventure with our pals, Doctor and the
Vash,
gang.
Jenny and Strax, you know.
Exactly.
Fine.
That was the point of it. What is the point of Sleep No More?
Well, yeah. I'll say this as well. It's not the first... Well, 5 years prior to this, you made a video with Doctor Who and the Sandman song already.
Yeah.
So, do you reckon Mark Gatiss watched your video and was like,
Well,
I want to do that?
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen.
Well, I tell you what, Tom, it's not the first Doctor Who episode to take one of my music videos' song choices and put it into the episode.
Supermassive Black Hole, Rebel Flesh.
Oh, no,
yeah,
right?
I know what you're saying.
I think they're avid viewers over at Cardiff.
Of Garden Gnome 118,
Yes, definitely.
I'll say this as well, Sleep No More, as a criticism. There are some bits where it really is like drowning in exposition. There's too much stuff on the sleep dust, how the sleep dust works. I think they could have just summarised that a bit better. I don't mind it as much as I do some other episodes of
I
Doctor Who.
liked that he put in a character who ideologically objected to the progress of technology. And like, whilst everyone, say in our times, is buying iPhones and stuff, and someone thinks, well, I don't want an iPhone, I don't need an iPhone, so I'm not going to get that. This guy was saying, well, no, I think it's unnatural not to sleep, so I'm not going to use the sleep machines.
Yeah.
And that was good.
Maybe the sequel thing he's been talking about was thought of at the same time as this one, and actually there's a lot more to explore that would have made this a more complete story.
But you read right that it was meant to be a two-parter, and then he turned it into a one-parter.
Yeah.
But this is half a story.
Well, it was what they did with Nightmare in Silver, isn't it? Where they said, okay, well, we said two-parter, but we're going to just squeeze it down. It doesn't work anymore. What a shame. Never mind. Finale, Moffat. Go, do it.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
Doesn't really work. I don't hate it.
Tom doesn't hate it. Stephen thinks it's a waste of time.
Okay.
And that it's boring.
This was interesting. Join us next time for Face the Raven.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official
Bird Nomahawk
YouTube channel.